Today we have another problem related to outright rate or forward rate. So the question is here, probable question in your SEM exam also, quite different with the last problem, right? A banker provides these quotations. Swaps and quotation is between CAD means Canadian dollar with the US dollar. So 1 US dollar per US dollar, Canadian dollar they have given two-way quotations. That means all these quotations are two-way quotations. Both bid and ask price are involved in single quote, right? Solution for this, you all are aware that step 1, calculation of outright rates, right? So given in the problem, it is the swap, swap points, bid and ask, right? So spot rate given in the problem is 3.40 oblique 3.45 means there are two rates involved in single quote. One is 3.40 and another one is 3.45, right? So the lower one is 3.40. That is why 3.40 is your bid price and ask price is 3.45. Then 1 month swap point is given, whether to add or deduct. So 10 oblique 15, that is from left to right it is in increasing order. You have to add with the soft rate, so spot rate 3.40 plus 10 3.50 oblique 3.60 is 1 month outright rate, and 3 months outright rate is 3 point, again it is in increasing order, so we have to add it to the spot rate, right? 3.40 plus 33.70 oblique 3.95. Then 6 months outright rate is 3.60. Again you have to add it because it is in increasing order, 20 oblique 40. So you have to add it with the spot rate, right? 3.40 plus 20, 3.60 oblique 3.85. So these are the outright rates. The spot rate they have given in the problem, and the 1 month forward rate or outright rate, since it is in increasing order, I have added it to the spot rate, right? Now, the questions, focus these questions, they are asking what will be the profit if an importer pays $10,000. So importer pays $10,000 means he is importing from US, and importer's home currency is Canadian dollar, right? So since he is paying, he is an importer paying $10,000 because he has imported something from US. That's why he is paying in US dollar. So eventually there are two currencies in this quotation. One is Canadian dollar and another one is US dollar. So since he is paying in US dollar, ultimately the importer's home currency is Canadian dollar, that is the CAD, right? So to pay $10,000, they are asking what will be the profit if an importer pays $10,000 today. Today means spot rate. Today is related to the spot rate instead of 3 months later. 3 months later means 3 months outright rate or forward rate, right? So what will be the profit if an importer pays $10,000? So if he intends or if he is ought to pay $10,000, he has to buy it. He has to buy the dollar by selling Canadian dollar, right? So if importer has to pay in dollars, then he or she has to buy US dollar and sell his home currency Canadian dollar. So since the importer's home currency is Canadian dollar, to buy US currency he has to sell his home currency Canadian dollar to buy the US dollar, right? To pay, right? So if an importer has to pay in dollars, then he has to buy US dollar and sell Canadian dollar, right? So again, if what happens if an importer buys $10,000 today instead of 3 months later, whether he gains or loses his home currency, right? So today's rate or spot rate. So here are the quotations, right? So bid is buying price of the banker and ask price is the selling price of the banker. Now importer is the buyer of US dollar, right? So importer is the buyer and banker is the seller. So banker sells at ask price, right? So importer has to buy $10,000 by paying the banker's ask price, banker's selling price. So given in the given quotation, banker's selling price is Canadian dollar per US dollar 3.45, right? So 10,000, 3.45 is to buy 1 US dollar. In the given problem, he is going to buy 10,000 US dollar. So to buy 1 US dollar, he has to pay 3.45. So to buy 10,000 US dollars, he has to pay Canadian dollar 34,500, right? 34,500 Canadian dollar he has to pay if he buys it today. If he buys $10,000 today, he has to pay 34,500 Canadian dollar. Instead, now they are asking, what happens if he buys $10,000 3 months later? So 3 months 3 months outright rate. 3 months outright rate we have calculated in the first step of the solution itself. So 3 months later, if he buys today, he has to pay 3.45 Canadian dollar per US dollar. If he is going to buy the same $10,000 after 3 months, then he has to pay to buy 10,000 US dollar. He has to pay after 3 months. Banker's selling price becomes 3.95 Canadian dollar, right? So Canadian dollar 3.95. That is equals to 39,500 he has to pay after 3 months to buy US dollar. Look at the problem. They are asking what will be the profit if an importer pays Canadian dollar today to buy 10,000 US dollar after 3 months instead of 3 months later. So we have calculated if he buys it today to buy 10,000 US dollars, at the spot rate, that is today's rate, he has to shell out Canadian dollar 34,500, right? Instead, if he is going to buy after 3 months, 3 months later, if he is going to buy the same 10,000 US dollar, he has to pay 39,500. That is, so profit is, so answer to the question number one, I am continuing from here. So profit gained by buying it today itself is, profit is equals to Canadian dollar 39,500 minus at the spot rate he has paid $34,500, right? So profit is Canadian dollar 5,000 Canadian dollar is his profit because he had bought US dollar at the spot rate today itself instead of buying it 3 months later. So this is the advantage he is gaining by spot trading, right? By spot contract. So first question was, what will be the profit if an importer pays 10,000 US dollar today? Pays in the sense buys. To pay $10,000, he has to buy the 10,000 US dollar, right? So to buy $10,000 today, he has to pay 34,500 Canadian dollars. Instead, if he is going to buy after 3 months, he has to pay 39,500 Canadian dollars, right? So ultimately, his profit is by spot contract is Canadian dollar 5,000, because if he is going to buy after 3 months, he has to pay 39,500 US Canadian dollars. But eventually he bought it earlier itself at the spot rate, so he bought at 34,500 Canadian dollar. Ultimately his profit is 5,000 US dollar because of spot contract, right? Then second question, they are asking, what is the advantage, what is the privilege or benefit if an exporter receives 10,000 US dollar? In the first problem was related to import. So importer has to pay in foreign currency. To pay foreign currency, he has to buy, right? Importer buys the foreign currency by selling home currency. Now, second problem, the problem is related to export. So what is the advantage? What is the advantage if an exporter receives 10,000 US dollar? Because some Canadian exporter has exported certain goods to US. That's why he has received US currency, that is dollar, 10,000 US dollars. After 6 months, instead of today, what happens? See, if the Canadian exporter receives US dollar, he has to sell the US dollar, that is the foreign currency, to buy the home currency. While the import related problem, he has to sell the home currency to buy the foreign currency to paying off his transaction, right? For goods being imported from foreign country, right? Second problem is related to export. What is the advantage if the exporter receives foreign currency for goods being exported to other countries, right? So he received US dollar, Canadian exporter received US dollar, so he cannot spend in US dollar in his home country Canada. He has to convert it into Canadian dollar. To convert to Canadian dollar, he has to sell the US dollar to buy the Canadian dollar, right? Now this problem is related to export. What is the advantage if an exporter receives 10,000 after 6 months instead of today? So question number 2. if an exporter receives 10,000 US dollar, he has to convert it to Canadian dollar by selling the foreign currency US dollar. At what rate he sells? If an exporter receives 10,000, what is the advantage if an exporter receives 10,000 after 6 months? If an exporter receives US dollar after 6 months, he has received. See, in this problem, an Canadian exporter has received 10,000 US dollar after 6 months being goods being exported, right? So 10,000 US dollar he has received. After 6 months, he has he has to convert it to Canadian dollar, right? To convert it to Canadian dollar, he is going to sell it to the banker. So banker's quotation they have given bid and ask. Bid is the buying price of the banker and ask is the selling price of the banker. Now the exporter is an individual. He is selling the US dollar and banker is the buyer here. So banker has given his buying rate, that is the bid rate, right? So if the exporter receives US dollar, he is going to convert it that by selling the US dollar to the banker, right? Banker buys at after 6 months, 6 months outright or 6 months buying rate of the banker is 3.60 Canadian dollar, right? That becomes Canadian dollar 36,000, right? So that is if he sells the US dollar after 6 months. Now what happens? What is the advantage? If exporter receives $10,000 after 6 months instead of today, what happens if an exporter receives 10,000 US dollar today, he has to sell it at the spot rate. Spot rate is Canadian dollar 3.40. That is by selling 10,000 US dollar at the spot rate, he is getting 34,000 Canadian dollar. So in the problem they have asked, what is the advantage or what is the benefit exporter is getting by selling US dollar after 6 months instead of today. So after 6 months, if he sells US dollar 10,000 US dollar, he gets 36,000. If he sells it today or at the spot rate, he is getting 34,000 Canadian dollars. So the ultimate profit or benefit or advantage is Canadian dollar 36,000 minus Canadian dollar 34,000. So your answer is 2,000 Canadian dollar is the benefit exporter receives from this particular transaction by selling US currency after 6 months instead of today, that is at the spot rate. Now third question they may ask in your SEM exam related to same quotations. How much will an individual earn if he buys 5,000 US dollar today and sell it after 1 month, 3 months, and 6 months. So here is the problem. So how much an individual foreign exchange trader or foreign exchange participant, how much will an individual earn if he buys $5,000 and sell it? To buying it, answer to the question number 3, to buy 5,000 US dollar today, that means at the spot rate. If he is going to buy the $5,000 at the spot rate is 3.40 is the banker's bid price, buying price, and 3.45 is the banker's selling price, right? So to buy 5,000 US dollar, we have to buy it from the banker. So banker provides us this quotation. So banker's selling price per US dollar is 3.45, right? To buy 3.45 is to buy 1 US dollar. To buy 5,000 US dollar, that is equals to 17,250 Canadian dollar. To buy 1 US dollar, he has to pay 3.45 Canadian dollar. That is the ask price, that is the selling price of the banker. Now, to buy entire 5,000 US dollar, he has to pay Canadian dollar 17,250. Now, coming back to the second part of the question. If he buys it $5,000, to buy $5,000, he is paying 17,250 and he keeps it for a month and he sells it after 1 month. After 1 month, he sells it. He sells it in the sense he is selling 5,000 US dollar, and after 1 month he goes to bank. He says, I am selling 5,000 US dollar. What price will you give me? So banker says, after 1 month, banker buys from the individual. Individual is the seller, right? He sells it to the banker. So banker is ready to buy this US dollar at the rate. After 1 month, banker's buying rate is Canadian dollar 3.50, right? So that is $5,000 multiplied by 3.5. That comes up to Canadian dollar 17,500. So after 1 month, he buys the 5,000 US dollar at spot rate 17,250 Canadian dollar. He pays it to buy 5,000 US dollar, and he sells the same 5,000 US dollar after a month. So after a month, banker's quotation, banker's buying price was 3.50. So he is getting 17,500, right? He has paid 17,250 and now he is getting 17,500, right? So ultimately the profit is 250 Canadian dollar. That is Canadian dollar 17,500 he receives after selling 5,000 US dollar, and to this 5,000 US dollar was bought at the price of 3.45 before 1 month. So he has paid 17,250 Canadian dollar. Now he is getting 17,500 Canadian dollar. So the ultimate profit is 250 Canadian dollar. That is 17,500 Canadian dollar minus Canadian dollar 17,250. Now, this is the answer to the question number A. Now, after 3 months, he sells it at the rate of, after 3 months, he sells it and banker buys it at 3.70 Canadian dollar 3.70. That comes up to 18,500 Canadian dollar, and the profit is 18,500 Canadian dollar minus 17,250 Canadian dollar is Canadian dollar 1250 if he sells after 1 month, after 3 months, right? Now, this is the solution to question number B. Now, the question number C, they are asking what happens if he sells after 6 months. So, after 6 months, the banker's quotation or banker's buying price is 3.60 per US dollar. That is the buying price of the banker. He is the individual, is the seller, and banker is the buyer here. So banker buys at 3.60 Canadian dollar. So to buy, by selling 1 US dollar, he is getting 3.60 Canadian dollar, and if he sells 5,000 US dollar, he gets 18,000 Canadian dollars. So his ultimate profit is 18,000 Canadian dollar 750. That is 18,000 Canadian dollar minus Canadian dollar 17,250. So ultimate profit is Canadian dollar 750. So these type of questions are most probable in your SEM exam. If you have any doubts, we will solve once we meet in offline class. Thank you.